Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon. The show I'm doing to celebrate the fact that 2024 is the 50th anniversary of the game Dungeons and Dragons and the entire hobby of tabletop role-playing games. And all year long, I've been having conversations with people who have worked on the game and talking about our history before working and working on the game, all kind of behind-the-scenes interesting stuff. And it's been a lot of fun. There's one guest who I've wanted to have on for a while. We tried earlier, had some technical difficulties that got in the way, and then the summer happened and scheduling got in the way. But I'm very happy to have him back this week, and that is Mr. Ed Greenwood, the creator of the Forgotten Realms, and so much more. We will be going to him in just a second. I do want to point out, though, that this episode is not live. Although there are people who are watching it live, but it's not going to go out mainly until Thanksgiving. It's not Thanksgiving where I am. Oddly enough, it is Thanksgiving where Ed is, but we can talk about that in a second. So I'm still in October headspace, and I'm going to try and put myself into November headspace. But hope you enjoy it. I hope you all are having a pleasant Thanksgiving. If you're in the U.S. and if you're in Canada, then I hope... Wow, this gets complicated. It's like time travel. I hope you're having a good Thanksgiving this week now, or had one in the past when this becomes a public view. I can't do this. I'm an artist. I'm not a scientist. So let's forget about this and go straight over to talking to Ed Greenwood. Ed Greenwood.
Hello!
Hey there, sir. It is so good to see you. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Likewise. Hi. Hi, everybody.
Yes. It's really weird that it turns out that we're recording a U.S. Thanksgiving show on the week of Canadian Thanksgiving.
Yeah. You see, we need to get our crops in early
serendipity.
So that we can survive the winter.
So for those who don't know, Ed is a Canadian author, which his bio always begins with, which I love, because not enough. Ed knows this. My mother's side of the family is Canadian, and so not enough Canadian folks know about the rich history Canada has in D&D and in gaming. And Ed, you maybe personify that better than anyone else.
Uh-oh. Oh boy, we're in a very... Yeah, but there are lots of people.
There are.
Perkins. Yeah, that hail from our frozen way. I mean, our northern.
The Great White North.
Yes.
Eh?
Yes, it is always the Great White North when you forgot your coat.
So you're best known as the creator of the Forgotten Realms, for sure.
It's all my fault.
Yes. Well, I wasn't going to say fault, but if you want to, go ahead. That's all right. But the interesting thing that D&D fans, longtime D&D fans, will know this, but people new to it probably don't, is that the Forgotten Realms itself predates D&D by a good margin. This is the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons and any tabletop role-playing game. But the Forgotten Realms is how much older than that?
About 10 years. I started work on the Realms when I was 5. I was a lonely bored kid. And yeah, so that makes it 60 years. Yeah.
Wow, 60th anniversary. So, since there wasn't a game that went with this, what was your impetus for doing that?
Well, I was reading my way through all the books in my father's den.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad had a huge collection of pulp paperbacks. Give one to a friend in uniform. The sort of thing. And I would constantly come pounding up the stairs and interrupt him when he had, company over, um, saying, Dad, this is great. And I'd wave the latest copy of something I just finished reading
Right.
and said, "Where's the next one?" And he wanted to get rid of me. um, and would say, "Well, son, that's all very well, but if you like that, you're going to have to write it yourself. That author died in 1938." And I go, "Okay," and I go pounding back down the stairs and start writing a terrible pastiche. But I was learning to write by
Right.
copying the styles of everybody that was on my father's shelves, and some of them were things like Lord Dunsany, really beautiful lyrical fantasy writing. Some of them were the lowest of the pulps.
Right.
Um, Owl Hoot Trail, she was staked out nude in the sun to die. That sort of stuff.
I have a friend
Yeah,
who has a vintage shop, and those go for a lot of money these days.
yeah, they do indeed. And just between you, me, the wall, and the internet, um, what the sizzle that you are buying is just that sizzle.
Right.
Because with a few rare exceptions, what was considered racy, hardcore, salacious then, we consider like children's fare now.
Right. Yeah. No,
You
that's
know,
it's.
so do not buy if you're this is going to be hot. It's going to be lukewarm. Uh, anyway, but I would um my aunt Clara, who'd grown up through 2 world wars and the depression,
Mm,
um did what she did all the time. Farmers do not pay for paper
right.
during the depression, but all groceries came in brown paper bags. You bring them home, you put the groceries away, you get out your kitchen carving knife, which is a ground down machete, um, liberated from some poor German guy in World War One, and you slice the sides of the bags up, and then you iron them with the same iron you iron the clothes with, flat, and then you put them downstairs with crayons for my 2 younger sisters and pencils for me. So I would sit down and longhand write a fantasy story, and I needed a setting, and I was reading my father's pulp magazines, which
Mm,
included Fantastic Adventures and
right.
its various predecessors. And in those, by the way, there were new Conan stories in there from um, Carter
Howard.
and
Yeah.
DeCamp, but there were also Fafhrd and Grey Mouser stories from
Right.
Fritz Leiber, and they were Mutt and Jeff um, friends, buddies, having swords and sorcery adventures in a coherent world. And the world was just the backdrop. They were episodes in the lives of the characters. But if you read more than one of them, and I soon started looking through the magazines for more,
Right.
you realize this is a coherent world here, and you're learning a tiny little bit more about it in each as the background in each thingy. So I started creating my own world, and I was I wanted sort of a sword and sorcery vibe, uh, not the Tolkien vibe of the huge
Right.
good versus evil save the world, because I wasn't comfortable up on that exalted thing. Um, I wanted lunch bucket guys, guys like you and me, trying to save the world, and I was writing my own, and I came up with a character called Mert the Moneylender, and Mert was a cross between Nicholas Van Ryn from Poul Anderson's Pulso Technically,
Mm,
um, Guy Gilpatrick's drunken engineer Glenn Cannon from there were men's magazines, and again, don't take that the wrong way. They weren't those sort of men's magazines, but he was a drunken Scottish engineer on a tramp freighter in our real world who was swindling his way around the world, because the hold of a tramp freighter is where you can store all sorts of things that you don't want to pay customs duty on. And he would get drunk on Duggan's Dew of Kirkintilloch and have adventures in every port. So I borrowed that, and then Shakespeare's Falstaff.
right.
So that was
Right.
that was my Realms point of view character. I didn't know it was the Realms in 1965. I didn't know that till 1966, and he went every story was a port city set story,
Right.
and at the end of the story, he would leave town one flopping sea-booted foot ahead of his new enemies he'd made during the story, his old enemies that he started the story fighting,
Right.
and the local authorities who were now after him. So he was moving along the Sword Coast south, um, and he got to Waterdeep and decided he liked it there and would stay there. And that's how I came up with the Forgotten Realms. I copied the realms when when D&D came along. I bought the pamphlets and read them. My friends and I sat down and played them and said, this is a great idea, but the execution just isn't there.
Yeah.
It's just going to devolve into an argument at the table. So we put it away again. But then when the monster manual came out, we all bought it and said, this is really cool as a reference work, because here are all these new cool monsters. And here's all the monsters from mythology and dinosaurs put together with their stats and how they work. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then when the monster manual, the player's handbook came out, and we said, oh, Jack Vance's magic system from the Dying Earth.
Yeah.
Okay, now then. So immediately, I recast the realms. I was going to use it as the armature for all my stories, just to keep me honest as an author.
All right,
Because
hold up.
now,
Before we go, I want to say a couple things. One is, folks in the chat, Ed can't see. Usually the guests have an opportunity. Our solution for the tech problems means Ed does not see what you're saying. So it's going to be up to me. And once I start drawing, I'm going to see it less. So maybe if you've got a question, put a big Q next to it, so it'll be easier for me to see. Ed, Julia Martin is here, and she says,
hi,
"Squee, squee," says Julia.
hello.
I've missed Ed so much.
But your aim is getting better, right? No.
Sooner or later you hit him. He's getting older. He can't move as fast.
Yeah.
Chris Andrews, one of the regulars in our chats, said he wants to. Let's see. He's got a couple of questions. I'm going to distill them here. He wants to know how you feel about the realms becoming the quintessential setting for younger fans. He notes that he himself Dragonlance fan, but he's a little jealous of FR, but he loves your work and is very happy to get to interact with you today.
Well, it's a big universe.
Yeah.
We can have all the worlds.
Right.
The original realms was all jumping through gates and exploring all the worlds. So it isn't a zero-sum game.
Right.
It's a rising tide lifts all boats. So yeah, and I play regularly in Jay Scott's Greyhawk game, and I write new stuff for Greyhawk.
Yeah.
I think
the fan base, very often you have your favorite, and you want your favorite to be everyone's favorite, and so that's
right.
When one of them has to be out front, and those of us that work on it, we love them all,
mm-hmm.
but the fans will have their particular, and then jealousy enters the picture a little bit.
Well, yeah, okay, so that's where we have to delve in a little bit into TSR.
All right, so before we do that, now again, sorry to stop you, but I want to transition over and start drawing. Otherwise, the whole hour is going to happen.
And we're going to talk. Yeah,
too. We're going to talk anyway. But I want to get some. Well, I want to get some work done. No, I got the wrong thing up. Hold on. Technical
Press
difficulties. Don't look behind that curtain. There we go.
Too late. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to be doing a homage to the 5th edition Monster Manual, which, as it turns out, I knew there was a big beholder on it as I was getting ready to do this. Surprised to find out that's the Xanathar. That's not just any old beholder. That's the Xanathar. Yes. Once you're out of house, you're out of house.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. Like they tell me anything either.
Yeah. All right. So please continue. I'm sorry to have interrupted.
No. I just wanted to say, okay, if Greyhawk's the original world and Gary's gone and you don't want to use Greyhawk, you have to find a new world. So the company designs Dragonlance. It has a big epic tale. It takes all the company's resources and all the king's men for 2 years, and you tell this huge epic story, and you save the world. And you have a little problem because you've saved the world. What do you do for an encore?
Right.
Everything is going to be an anticlimax. And, well, I suppose we could just explore the other side of the planet, which they literally did. But Jeff Grubb, then a staff designer at TSR, wrote a white paper, a position paper, a proposal for a unified game world for the second edition of the game. And this flew with management. I didn't know any of the details because I'm up in Canada working at a library, mild-mannered library clerk. I don't know any of this stuff. And management went for it. And his reward was, okay, Jeff, find the world. So he cold called me up at the library, and
Oop. Hold on here.
that's how, because I said yes, and the
Okay.
realms came to.
Sorry, folks. Technical issues abound. This is, too much magic in one room, I think, Ed, is what it is.
Yes.
You are too
That's
powerful.
got to be it.
That's
Yeah.
it. So I don't know if folks will be able to re-find us while we are recording this, but most of you are watching this pre-recorded anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Holy cats, is this confusing. But we can jump back in, and if people find us, great. If not, we'll record a fun session for everyone else to watch on American Thanksgiving. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So I'll come back here to the screen where I'm drawing. I'd gotten a little ways in, and you were talking about...
just about the realms was bought as a kitchen sink world. As
Yes.
we have these modules already printed, the Desert of Desolation series, with Egyptian pyramids in them. So we need a world that can take Egyptian pyramids. We want to do jungle adventures, which became Malatra, the living jungle. We want to do Arabian adventures, which became El Khadim.
Right.
We wanted Oriental adventures, which became, wait for it, Oriental Adventures.
Some names are easier than others.
Yeah, but I mean, it was built as a or acquired as a kitchen sink world. So yeah, that's why the Realms is like the world, the default world. Now you'll be getting Greyhawk. Oh, I hope I'm not spoiling anything for anybody. You'll be getting Greyhawk in the new D&D as a sample world, because that's how you protect the trademark. You use it every 5 or 6 years. But yeah, the Realms was designed to be the world for everybody and to encompass all things. You see, if Dragonlance is the world of one big epic story, the heroes of the land saving the world, Jeff asked me to describe as if I was pitching it for. He said, "Okay, imagine you're in a room full of American executives, so they know nothing because they're executives.
Right.
Describe the realms for them, in like a sentence or two." And I said, "It's the land of 1,000 stories." So that's why the realm became the sort of setting du jour, because it can take everything. It's designed to be the land of 1,000 stories, so you can tell your own story and your own gaming table, and the realms can accommodate you without the dungeon master having to go through fits of creation that he or she may not have time for in their busy lives, when they just want to sit down with their friends and play D&D.
There's a lot of things about that I find. There's like 3 different conversations about those sentences I want to have all at once.
Okay.
But
okay.
I mean, one of the interesting things is Jeff has been a guest on this show, as have several other people who were involved. Julia, who was in the chat before when we had a chat, um, and so it's interesting to hear the same story from different perspectives. Like in a Rashomon kind of style, I'm getting four or five, and they all. The funny thing is, unlike Rashomon, you're all telling exactly the same story. Um, one of the things that other people, Jeff in particular, uh, brought up is that when he came to you asking about this, that your response had been, "Well, you've been publishing it in Dragon Magazine for years, so I thought you already owned it."
Yeah.
And his response was, "I didn't hear that. You're going to hear back from us soon. Don't ever say that again."
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yes, he did say those exact words. Um, he asked me if I had a pencil and paper. And I
Right.
said, Jeff, it's the public library. I have a pencil and paper. And he said,
Okay.
good, write this number down. And I did. And he
Yeah.
said, now wait until after 5 o'clock my time, which is 6 o'clock your time, and call this number. And I said, okay. Will the FBI be paying attention to me afterwards? He said, no, 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 no. This is my boss's number, Mike Dobson. You'll be calling him at home. And of course, the whole idea was if the conversation didn't go well, it just never happened.
Right.
It was, not on company time, not on company phones, not, it just didn't happen.
Right.
But, he said, we'd like to buy your world. I said, great. Yes. And he goes, don't you want to hear how? Nope. Because I just wanted beautiful color maps for my world
Right.
that didn't have my pencil crayon scribblings in all the C's, because you could see that I'd been using pencil crayons to do the C. Even if I did artistic waves, they just looked bad, at that scale. So I was going to get like really beautiful maps, and that's all I cared about.
Well, thankfully, smarter heads prevailed. More business-minded heads prevailed. Um,
They went out and got some, eh?
yeah.
No.
So I've just found that I think the problem is the connection to my drawing board. So I'm not gonna, I'm going to turn that off entirely, and we're just going to have a conversation. And I'm still
Sorry about that.
No. This is a problem on my end. Not It's not your problem. Folks who do enjoy the drawings, I will do one, and I will maybe I'll append a process video to this video when it goes up, or somehow the drawing will still get done and posted.
Excellent.
But
Excellent.
it won't be while we chat. Hopefully that will make everything else stop being. Everything on my end I'm seeing is a little sketchy. And I think I'm just trying to ask my machine to do too many things at once. I guess you know what I need. I need to, those who are watching. Let's get a lot more. Let's get a lot more viewers to come in, so I can get sponsors, so I can get money to buy a better machine.
There it is. That's what we need.
So, let's take a half step backwards to what I made you stop talking about earlier, about how when D&D came out, you had. I'm seeing a little lag in Stan's feed, but the stream is staying. Okay, good, fine. I can live with a little lag. Were you a hobby, what we now call a hobby gamer before that? Were you someone that played the board games and war games and miniatures games of the day?
Yes. Okay. Here's the thing. Let's go back to your childhood. So it's 1965. The world is black and white. The Beatles are hitting America. Ed Sullivan is on the screen. Mr. Television, Milton Berle, has just left the screen.
Mm-hmm.
it's most people get their TV through rabbit ears. The internet isn't even a dream yet. Um, so most people are watching 3 channels because that's all they can get. Maybe 4 if they have a local channel. There is no cable. There's no satellites. Well, okay, there are satellites, but not for that. And there are no war games per se
Right.
out for public consumption. There are games which come in boxes, and they are family games, and steeplechase and snakes and ladders and stuff. Those sort of games and Monopoly dominate the field, but there's no large military gaming, simulation gaming, any of that stuff, with one exception, Kriegspiel, which is not a public game. It's just something we do. And Kriegspiel, um, the name comes from Germany, the German High Command,
Really?
but not Hitler and all that stuff. It comes, they renamed something. It comes from Napoleonic times, but they were renaming something that the ancient Romans did to train their commanders.
Right.
And we know it today in modern North America as broken telephone. And it's simply putting all of your players, your officers to be, in different rooms or different buildings, using runners to go between them
Mm.
and to take their orders and to bring their intel. So it's reproducing the fog of war, the confusion, and you're trying to command your troops without being able to see them. And there are various methods, and Donald Featherstone, now unfortunately no longer with us, I had the pleasure of meeting him at a Gen Con where he was a guest of honor. And he was a delightful gentleman, quiet, unassuming, and really schooled, a war college guy. That was fun. Okay. But th- he had hit upon using Airfix plastic figurines
Mm.
available in his country at the time to do a sort of half Kriegspiel, which is where you use, uh, for all the people who smoked, um, matches didn't come in little books that you tore off in Britain in those days. That hadn't come in yet. They came in boxes, and they were wooden matches. So, if you had any sort of hobbyist things at all, you saved those empty boxes. Everybody saved them because you could put change in them, you could put pins and needles in them.
Mm.
Um, they many a young lady had a dollhouse with a dresser made of glued together matchbook boxes. Well, you could also take a map of a real world place, a military map, and you could rule it up, like just pencil and paper, put a grid across it, have your dresser full of matchbooks that you'd made for the doll's house, and it just corresponded to map grids, and you moved off the map. And then when you ran into, like when you opened a dresser drawer and your tiddlywink joined a tiddlywink belonging to the enemy, you then stop, prepare a sand table for a war game, and have a fight. So that was out there, and my father, like most people in the civilized world at that point, I'm being sarcastic here, by the way, folks, um, um, bought Life magazine and Time magazine, and there was an issue of Life magazine that had a SPI style, as in hexes, zones of
Mm.
control, war game of Shenandoah
Mm-hmm.
and Sherman's Run to the Sea sort of thing. And they were just talking about the American Civil War because it was an anniversary. But they put this game in on 2 facing pages. One was the map board, and one was all the historical explanation. And I played the crap out of that game by myself. Um, so, but and I we all played diplomacy.
Right.
Um, and stuff like that. But there was no wargaming industry. I'm older than that. So when someone asks, "How did you get into the industry?" I said, "I sat there and the industry came along and camped around me."
um, well said. So got a few people. Mark Wolf and Chris Andrews back, and Jacob Blackman's back. Yes, we've managed to reestablish contact. There will be no drawing going on, but we will have a lovely conversation. I get to focus all my attention on Ed now.
Hi.
I think that's exactly. You made this happen, didn't you? You wanted all of my attention.
Well, I did, but I didn't make it happen. Yeah, anybody who thinks I have any control whatsoever over tech.
Yes, well, that, and the U.S. government controls the weather, so.
It does. I've heard it. Yeah, and I heard a president deny it, so
Yeah.
it must be true.
So, you were saying earlier that when the first D&D booklets came out, you found that it wasn't suitable for what you were doing with the realms, or what? No. So go ahead, tell me again, because I think I missed exactly why it was that you put it aside at first.
Oh, okay. So it was all down to, guys, do you want to play this? And it was my friends who got together, and we were all nerds. We were all into fantasy and science fiction, and we would discuss like Roger Zelazny was just starting Amber
Right.
in those days, and Amber is full of murder mysteries and who done it, and it's all in the family, but which family member is behind all this? So we would discuss and argue as we walked through the parks where I lived, the public parks. We'd endlessly discuss this, who it could have been, who did this, who stabbed so and so. And then when each new book came out, we would rush out and buy it, and then we would take it home and not open it. We would open all the previous books and reread them up to the new book. And then we would enjoy the new book because we knew it was going to be some time before we got another book,
Right.
and we had to make it last. And one of the great joys of becoming a fantasy and science fiction writer was the chance to meet Roger and sit down and, well, lie down with him on roofs.
Mm-hmm.
Roger's Lasney smoked like a chimney, and this was just getting to the time when some people didn't want cigarette smoke in their houses. Well, they would host parties at these conventions,
Mm.
and this was in the summer. It would be a hot summer night, so he'd stroll upstairs during the party, find a window that opened, because windows did in those days,
Right.
and he could get out on a low, reasonably flat roof of a split level house and lie on his back, look at the stars, and smoke. So if you climbed out on the roof with him, you had Roger Zelazny as a captive audience, and you could ask him all sorts of things. And there was none of this waiting in line and keeping other people who wanted their stuff signed.
Right.
You he was you chat about life, the universe, and everything. So yeah, but this was years in the future, and so we would get together, and it was like, let's try playing this fantasy game. This would be cool. But when we played it, and this was the original 3 booklets, so Greyhawk with the thief, the mind flayer, a whole bunch of the magic items,
Mm.
the stuff that we all remember lovingly from every Dungeon Master's Guide. That wasn't part of it yet. It wasn't there. And we sat down to play it and said, this is a great idea, but it's just going to devolve into an argument over what really happened at the table.
Right.
That's why we abandoned it initially. We bought it, and we bought each new thing as they came out, and we hung on to it because we were interested. But it was like another storytelling aid for us to sit down or lie down in bed and just read.
Right.
And by the way, there is a huge, and people who design them ignore this at their peril, uh, segment of the hobby community who lives alone, or rather, they don't have gamers within reach, and they buy each new thing, even if it's a game thing and not a novel, and read it
Yeah.
as entertainment. And they may later on take something from it if they're playing, if they ever get the chance, but they just sit down and read. And so there was a lot of people, and we were amongst them then, who just read stuff for enjoyment. So each new release from TSR, each new D&D release, if it was like a new saga or chapter, or
Yeah.
a novel in an ongoing narrative, that was grist to our mill. That's what we wanted. We wanted really cool stories. It's all storytelling when it comes down to it. But a really good D&D game is a chance for everybody at the table to be part of the story, to be the storyteller, not passively have the story told to them, but to have a role in it, which is why dungeon masters tear their hair out, because
Right.
people go this direction instead of that direction, because they can, because they're part of the story. I love it. You know. Anyway, yeah. I talk too much. Anyway.
Yep. You know what? That's. I brought you here to talk too much. I'm
Okay.
right now trying to figure out my camera has gotten terrible, and I'm trying to figure if I have a separate way to. No,
Mm.
if I do that, it's um. It was
He clicked something, folks.
I
The
did.
world is about to end.
Why? Oh, Adobe is the problem.
Adobe?
Yeah, which shouldn't be involved, but occasionally Adobe gets involved where it shouldn't.
My goodness.
Something weird is happening, and I can't explain it. But now I've gotten someone to blame, and it's Adobe.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as there's a
As long as
scapegoat.
it's going on, as long as everyone else is watching and we're recording, great. Go ahead. Um, let's see. We've gotten a few people back in the chat, and so I'm going to set aside the questions I wanted to immediately ask you on that to let other people have a chance. Uh, let's see. What was your favorite character or campaign story from one of the campaigns you've played in over the years?
Oh boy. Um
Or just how about a good story? Let's take that favorite.
I think my favorite, and I've told this a bunch of times, but I think it's my favorite. One of the things I used to ask to do a lot, uh, um, yeah, at Gen Cons. So this is a Milwaukee era Gen Con.
Right.
Uh, I was comfortable running theater of the mind storytelling games. Don't worry about the rules. Just roll that funny shaped die.
Mm-hmm.
Roll that one. And I'll just tell the story. And then you tell me what you want to do. Well, I've never played before. Never mind. You don't need to roll the rules. Just roll the dice when I tell you to. And we'll just have a story unfold together. So, that can be a disaster. It can be the very thing that, initially warned us off D&D, the my friends and I, but it seemed to work pretty well. So they would ask me when I came up to volunteer for Gen Cons. I was never on staff at either TSR or Wizards of the Coast,
Right.
but for Canadian border crossing paying duty reasons, um, if I wanted to buy lots of games, and what gamer didn't, you wanted to stay for over a week,
Mm-hmm.
8 days minimum, um, to get across the border. So I would volunteer at every Gen Con, and one of the things they had me do, um, like say if the mayor of Milwaukee wanted to drop by the con and get a photo op, because all the cameras would be there, and it was a chance for an outing. He could take the wife and kids,
Mm-hmm.
and then he'd sit down and play D&D. Except that he'd never played D&D before, and his wife had never played D&D before. And they, oh well, Ed, just run him through it. Sure, no problem. And one Milwaukee, thankfully the mayor wasn't there to muddy the waters. Um, we had a brilliant, very young, very shy young lady attending the con, and this is somebody who is obviously brilliant, and she has very overprotective, overachieving parents who are helicopter parents. Okay, and they are accompanying her to the con against their better judgment. You know,
Yeah.
and they are hovering and watching until the father takes one look at all the nerd toys for sale and he's gone. He's in his element. Okay, the mother is still hovering, not too close, and she wants to play D&D, and we get going, and she is the only female at the table, and she's by far the youngest person at the table, and she's sharing the table with a lot of overweight, bearded guys or skinny as a rail guys with inappropriate sayings on their t-shirts. Okay?
Right?
And inevitably, somebody is going to tell her, "Let me show you what to do, little lady." It's trying to tell her what
Right.
and I am gently heading that off, and she's gently taking it because she knows what she's doing
Right.
or thinks she does, but she is very nervous. She's very nervous just being out in public. She doesn't do this stuff before. So I give her the character sheets, all of them, to choose to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately one of the guys starts trying to pick for her. All the things are happening.
Right.
But she finally picks the paladin, the platinum. That's what she wants to play. And down they go into the dungeon. And they do really well and get in over their heads and get too deep into the dungeon. And then they realize they're in real trouble. They're down to very few hit points left. It's time to run. They've stirred up the hornet's nest of all the orcs who live here. Like an army is coming for them.
Right.
They got to get out. So they turn and flee. And they're not going to make it. And it's clear they're not going to make it. And the girl, young lady, bursts into tears.
Oh.
Not because but this was her first chance, her first play session.
Right.
And she wanted it to be a glorious triumph. And it's not going to be. And she could see that. And she says, "Goodbye, my friends. It was nice knowing you." And she turns in the narrow doorway and does a heroic last stand. So all of her friends can get out.
Oh.
So the paladin goes down fighting. And she is talking to me through tears streaming down her face. She's guttered that this happened. And it does happen. I don't fudge the dice. I give her a little help, but
Right.
there's no way. And down she goes. And her mother is within earshot, but way like 100 yards back from the table, and is now plowing through the crowds trying to see what made her little girl cry.
Mm-hmm.
The father has returned laden with lovely practices. And he hears it too, and he's coming. Something's hurt his little girl. He's coming for bear, and they're charging through the audience. At that moment, all these guys chair this girl up onto their shoulders, and are roaring her name, and it was that moment that she's never had her name chanted. She's never been the belle of the ball.
Right.
She's never had that. And her parents have never seen their little girl, who they think is brilliant, and they're right, and they think should rule the world, but isn't going to get the chance to, and they're right. They've never seen her in that light before, and certainly never heard her name chanted. And her face, because she's still guttered, this is still defeat, but somehow victory has come for, and it was that moment where, so the shy little girl, the game gave her chance to be the hero. And it was that, hey, I can do this. I got this. Yes, I got this. It was that moment. And I've never forgotten just the look on her face. It was just wonderful. And that's the thing. That's what D&D gives us. If you're in a wheelchair, you can be the action hero. That's the thing the game gives us. And it was just lovely to see it happen.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I've never forgotten. I've never seen her since that day.
Hmm.
I keep hoping I will
It's
see
like,
her at a Gen Con.
and that
You know?
woman was Kamala Harris.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. No.
It's like,
Wrong skin hue. Can have been. But you're right. Yeah,
yeah.
that would be nice if that sort of thing happened. And
If,
yeah,
if someone was writing the story, it would have an ending like that.
yeah. And there. That's actually a very interesting thing about Gen Cons because uh, I am now seeing uh shy little kids who are brought up to me
Mm,
because their parental unit wanted something signed and introduced to me. They're now bringing their grandchildren.
yeah,
Yet it's been that many Gen Cons,
it's been a
and I'm
while.
going, I feel old.
I hear you.
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh boy, it's my back. It's my back. Um, wow. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, there's so many Gen Con stories I've heard that are the comically bad versions of that. Where as
Yes.
the front end of your story, right, where the people are trying to tell someone what to do, and uh, um, hopefully they end up with the person having a good time. But that that particular one, right, that story,
Yeah.
that event, what she showed, she understood it. She made the heroic sacrifice. It clearly was not just a game to her. It meant something, and
Yeah.
like you say,
Yeah.
that's what role playing games with D&D. And here's where kind of the that uh, membrane between D&D, the game, the rule set, and hobby tabletop role playing, the hobby. Uh, um, you know, there have been a lot more. I don't know. I'm about to go into a weird subject shift, but right, D&D rules don't always encourage what you just described, and there have been a lot of games in the intervening years that have focused on that. But the fact of the matter is, D&D does and always has provided that if that's what you want.
Yeah. She was doing what she thought her character would
Right,
do.
right,
The right thing for her character. She was role playing her character the way her character would have done it, what she thought the character would
yeah,
do. And it was a noble thing. She didn't want to do it. She was really upset that this thing was happening.
right,
It was not the way she wanted her day to turn out, but she did it. And I think that's what the guys at the table, because after all, these are fictional characters.
right,
She's not really saving their lives, but they admired the hell out of her because they could see that she was utterly guttered.
right,
But, she was doing it for them. And it was like, holy crap, thank you. And that's the thing. We don't all, in real life get to save our loved ones or
right,
show people, how much they really mean to us. And in a role playing game, occasionally you can.
right.
Yeah.
I think that one of the great things about convention games, particularly in modern times where we spend so much time developing our characters and growing them, we don't want them to die, and we the games try and give us outs for these moments. But when you talk to anyone who's played the game a long time, they most of them will have stories like that where everything went wrong and someone did something heroic and saved in the most, you know gave the last full measure way, but because it's just on paper, everyone's still around to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a wonderful thing that you can show people, what you really like or what you really feel. But yes, it is just a game. But it's not just a game, which is why we play it and
Right?
spend all this huge amounts of money on it and all the rest of it. Yeah, it's a special game. And that's why we do the sacrifices. If Julie is still in chat, she can tell about the sacrifices where you write an entire game product in a
Right.
weekend because production is waiting. You do
Yeah.
things like that because, and it may be a horrible war story later, But at the time, you don't have time. You're just like, but you're excited to do it, but you don't say no. You
Right.
say yes because it's D&D, because it's what you love doing. I mean, surely most of the people in the building at TSR could have found jobs doing something else that paid more, or were
Yeah.
more secure, or this or that. But they also loved the game. That's the other part of the reason they were there.
Well said. Let's see. We've got a couple other questions that have come in here. Michael Pastor says he recently discovered that you wrote some "The Nature of" articles in Dragon. Do you recall any such thing? The nature of blank.
The that would probably be the ecology
Oh, the ecology
articles.
of. Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah,
probably it.
and okay, that was an editorial assignment given to me by Kim Mohan, now sadly no longer with us.
Yes, yeah.
Um, there was a uh, brief-lived uh, role-playing game magazine called, I think, Dragon Lords, and someone from that magazine um, took all the ecology of articles they'd written for that magazine and sent them to Dragon, because the Dragon Lords had gone under,
Right.
and um, Kim thought this was brilliant idea. We could do these for all the iconic monsters of D&D, and he I just agreed to be a contributing editor at a Gen Con
Mm.
earlier, um, purely because Kim was impressed because my Gates article that I sent in was the first article he'd ever come across a submission that had footnotes. So he was vastly impressed, and he invited me to Gen Con. He said, "What are you doing? Are you coming to Gen Con this year?" And I said, "I am now." And we bashed out the doors at Wisconsin Parkside and went for a walk. And he invited me to be a contributing editor, and I said, "Oh, sure. How much does it pay?" And he said, "That's the contributing part." But but um, he wanted a contributing editor because he needed somebody who could, because he had a journalism background.
Right.
And when he found out I was a journalism student, he thought he had it made, because it was like, okay, now I can assign articles. I finally have anyone who I can just give an assignment to. So the ecology of articles were assignments. The first sort of long running series. Worms of the North was the second long running series.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, they were a way of exploring. You see, a lot of if all you have to go on, as we did then,
Mm.
was monster manual illustrations, and the monster manual illustration only shows half the monster or one side of the monster,
Right.
or the monster with a hapless adventurer clutched in its talons. So the body of the hapless adventurer that's going to get munched on is blocking your view of a lot of the stuff of the monster itself.
Right.
You might not even know what the other side of the monster looks like, let alone what does it eat? Where does it lair? Does it lay eggs or live young?
Yeah.
Like, because there was a big part of the game then was to, hey, monster eggs, like dragon eggs, could be treasure. You could take them back to the city and sell them for lots of money. So gamers wanted to know this sort of stuff. So it was like, okay, let's do a series of ecology articles. So
Right.
that's where that started. Yeah.
Do you
So
do you
those are
know
the
do you know how many of those you did all told?
I don't, because they didn't all get published because of various vicissitudes and
Right.
changes in editorship and stuff. I think there were about 36 or so in there. Yeah, about that much. But again, I don't know how many saw print. Um, I have hidden behind me here in the cavernous chasms of this room. I'm at the undisclosed location that I'm speaking to you
The
from.
secret underground
Um,
bunker.
yeah, the secret underground bunker. That's it. I do indeed have a binder with all of the. I kept photocopies,
Right.
courtesy of the public library I worked in. Um, I mean, not courtesy. I paid for them, but I mean, they had the
Right.
photocopier. Because Jeff told me very firmly, keep copies of every single thing you send us.
Yeah.
And he was right, because of the original Realms turnover in 1986, there's one package that's still on the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you go to GameholeCon
Yes.
in a week,
Well,
and you look up
which
those,
will have been a month ago when people are watching this. But
yes, yeah, yes, guess of course. Oh yeah, time travel. I love time travel. Okay, and you look up at the ceiling of the game hole, and see my color map. That is the map I sent TSR, which eventually ended up in Julia's hands, Julia
right.
Martin, after um, various people had served their time,
Yeah.
had served out their sentences as traffic cop of the realms, and and that was the photocopy, because my originals were in very, very faint HB pencil,
Right.
and and we needed to darken them so anybody could see what was on them. And the other thing was, Jeff said very firmly, you need to keep off-site copies. These will be our backups,
Right.
because what happened if, perish forbid, there was a fire here? So I immediately started checking for news of a fire in Lake Geneva. It never happened.
Well, and before we came on, and I'm not going to let us get as deeply as we talked about beforehand, you and I were talking about the troubles of archiving and how
Yes.
uh, even if there isn't a fire in the building, if you don't need something for a while, once it's sent off to the printer and you go back to find it, it's not 100% certain that you'll be able to find it again.
Yeah. And if you throw something away, you will need it the next week. That's the
Yeah.
rule.
And welcome to Murphy's archiving
Yeah.
rule.
Yeah.
Dale
By
Donovan
the way,
has
folks.
joined us here.
Yeah. Hi. Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to scroll back here. I don't think I want to talk about that. Um, looking at some of the questions. This question is about the recent D&D movie and Baldur's Gate 3. Did you enjoy? Have you seen or played either of those? And enjoy them or not?
Yes. I enjoy them both. I have actually seen the movie 8 times now, because I work in a public library still. I should have retired, but I haven't yet. And my ladies hear endless stories and see endless photographs when I go away to conventions, and they, see all the fun we're having at a convention. Alcohol is usually involved, boys and
No.
girls. So, and they say, why would anybody do that? Because they are starting from the I am a reasonable person. Why would anybody do that? And of course, the answer is because those aren't reasonable people. Those are gamers. Ha ha ha. But I mean, they all know that I write stuff for D&D. So when the D&D movie came out, it said, "You're going to take us to the movie, aren't you, Ed? And you're going to sit there and explain everything." And I said, "I am not going to be that a-hole in the theater who talks all the way through the movie explaining it." But as we've said before, we flourish in rural Canada.
Mm,
And we found that if we went on a certain time to the theater, we had the theater to ourselves.
right.
So much so that when the movie ended and we came out of the theater, we were alone. There were no staff or anything. We were alone in the building. We could have done anything. Anyway, so we sat down in these lovely new chairs that they've come up with, these leather chairs that you can fall asleep in.
Right.
And boy, did the ladies flirt with doing that. And we sat through the entire movie, and we've done it several times now, as I've patiently explained what an owlbear is and what,
Mm.
uh, everything. And who came up with the fat dragon? Oh, that was Eric Boyd, but they've moved him to another. Why did they do that? It's a movie. They change everything. Why do they change everything? Because they can. All the, that sort of thing. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the it stands up to. I am testament that it stands up to repeated watching.
Yeah.
I have really enjoyed it. The Baldur's Gate I have not played as often, because too busy
Mm.
writing stuff, because you guys still want the realms. So I'm still turning out the realms. So I am busy turning out the realms. But I have played little snippets of it, um, following through paths to see where things would go, to see how people were portrayed. So to make the Baldur's Gate, your Baldur's Gate 3,
Mm.
um, canon, you can't kill Volo. Somebody killed Volo in
Right.
the game, or it's possible to kill Volo. You can't. He's a weave anchor. Um, Mistra will rescue him in some way. Um, I didn't think much of the way they portrayed Mistra in her dealings with Gale.
Mm.
But aside from that, things were great. And yes, while they were working on the game, I got a lot of proxy accounts asking me detailed lore questions about Baldur's Gate online. Yeah, it was fun. No, I really like it. And the one thing I really admire about that game is, and before you think, oh, Ed's a dirty old man, well, yes, he is.
Well,
Um,
not wrong.
guilty as charged. Yeah, not wrong. But I will say this: it is refreshing to have a game in which you can romance characters rather than kill them,
Right.
only kill them, when you have no other way of dealing with the world except killing it. I'm not sure that that prepares us for real life. I mean, it might, but
Hopefully.
I mean, I don't know if that. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it more warps how we approach real life.
yeah. And I think that's unfortunate. The game gave us a new dimension, because there are other games like, say, Elden Ring,
Mm.
but in that game you're wandering around on your own, making decisions,
Right.
rather than dealing with, um, interacting with other characters. You may talk to them before you kill them, but I mean, um, it's not the same as building a party, deciding to do things, um, interacting in characters with other ways than just chopping them apart and
Mm.
taking their stuff. You know, so yeah, I enjoy both the movie and the game. I thought they were great advances for new audiences for the game. Um, and I'm overjoyed that D&D is like on the up and up, and
Yeah.
getting discovered, and it's a golden age and all the rest of it. This is good. I'm a happy camper, and I intend to go to my grave being, yeah, that guy. Yes, I had something to do with that. Yes, I was that guy.
Let's see. We've got a champion of the realm here to support you, Ed. The name here is Naitomie. Naitomea.
Okay, all right.
But
Hi.
um, Chris Andrew asked, I mean, and kind of pertinent to what we were just talking about. You've written a lot of stories over the years, a lot of lines. Is there, if you, if Hollywood came to you to say, which one would you like to see developed into a, a series for HBO or a, a big Peter Jackson movie or whatever director you like? Which of your storylines would you most like to see adapted?
Yeah. That's one of those it depends answers, and it depends on what story do you want to tell, which is always the D&D question. What
Right.
story do you want to tell? And I think life in, say, Waterdeep, the crowded cosmopolitan city of Waterdeep, which offers you thousands of stories. It's sort of like using New York or Chicago as a
Mhm.
background. It gives you lots of meat to work with.
Yeah.
You can tell many stories. I think that would be good for an ongoing series. Um, what I think has been done too much of is our improbable heroes save the world. The
Hmm.
fate of the universe hangs in the balance, just because everybody's done it.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to have the gods on screen and do
Yeah.
that power level. And I've always liked, Spellfire is a perfect example, um, because Chandra had Spellfire just to keep her alive throughout that book, um, because I was asked by Jeff, show us all the power players, the movers and shakers, what we
Mm.
now call factions, and I called power groups back then. Show us all of them in the realms, introduce them to us. So I had to have some way of doing a travelogue that did that and kept this improbable young girl alive. And the whole point of having an improbable young girl is I wanted a female protagonist. I
Mm.
wanted it low in power level, just like an average person like you or me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to drive home you, you're bored, you hate your life, you want adventure, be careful what you ask for. I wanted to tell you,
Right.
but although I think Spellfire would make a great Marvel type movie, this big spectacle,
Hmm.
that isn't what I would want to see more of. So
Right.
I would want to see something that was low level and showed you the farmer, the blacksmith, and how they dealt with these big changes when heroes stride around to do things. How does that screw up your life?
Yeah.
That's I would like something that showed uh, modern people around the world that, so they got to see themselves and they could sit there and say, yeah, 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 that's me. Yeah, why that? Why are you doing that? Don't do that. That's crazy. You know, uh, so that you can yell at the TV screen and feel better because you see yourself there.
Right.
You know, so there's that. So again, it's what you'd like to see.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's interesting, and it's one of the things that talking with you and my other friends who are writers and storytellers that Hollywood doesn't always wants to have, and you said this earlier, they want to have the gods on screen. They want to have the big save the world thing, and they don't value the value of these stories. And I think it's interesting to look at situations where, like Star Wars, the everyone Star Wars fans almost universally will say that Empire Strikes Back is the best movie, and nothing climactic happens there. It's a story about these people moving through this difficult time, and because it's a story about them, that's what makes it the great movie. Star Trek points to Wrath of Khan, and although it is a naval battle movie, it's not about saving the Federation or saving the universe or fighting God on his own planet. It's a story about these characters, and I think that what I hear and what you're saying is what you would hope for is whoever's approaching you would be interested in telling that kind of story or and I love what you're saying
mhm.
about Waterdeep, right? If it was a series, make it set in Waterdeep, and then you can tell all these stories.
Yeah, and you had them all intertwined. In the old days of Spider-Man, the comic,
Mm,
not movies, where it's all Peter Parker desperately trying to get good photos, and
yeah,
J. Jonah Jameson hates Spider-Man and wants, photos of Spider-Man humiliated or killed or arrested or whatever. And you're in on the secret and nobody else is. And it's literally down to, oh, is Aunt May gonna catch me coming in through the window? Oh, dang, I forgot my camera. The webbing will have dried and it will have crashed to, it's average Joe problems. And we're down at that level. And that to me is, I think, a more palatable, more relatable story.
yeah,
Um, but again, it, I understand the allure of let's save the world. I get it. Uh, but for me, I'm more comfortable down at the level of um, I'm more of a Sam Gamgee, you know.
right.
Uh, um, well, Mr. Frodo needed rescuing, so he went along, you know.
That's
And when
What you do?
it's done, he says, "Well, I'm back. You know,
Yeah,
got to get on. It's time to plant. It's time to this. It's time to that." And it's that you can relate to, because after all, and Hollywood gets this underneath, because whenever you're having a huge battle, oh, just take the movie Independence Day for an example. There's always scenes that remind the audience what we're fighting for. The
right.
stakes. You have to do that, or it's meaningless, and they do.
Yeah. Well, but but Independence Day gets raked over the coals, and a lot of them do because they force that in without. They show you should care about this, but they haven't really at heart given you a reason to. They haven't taken the time to do the things that will
Bingo.
create the caring. They just kind of say, okay, well, here's the person you care about. Care.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They shoehorn it in
Yeah.
without taking the time, because yeah, that's the other thing. Moving bums out of seats in theaters, which post COVID shouldn't matter as much, but still does, still dictates the running times of movies. Whereas when I was a little kid, and my father took me to see 2001 because he thought, this is a movie you should see. You know, this son is a movie you should see. So off we went. But I mean, in those days, he was full of stories about Napoleon that
Right.
took 8 hours to watch. And I'd say, but I would have to go to the bathroom. He said they had intermissions. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
really? They took the time to tell the story?
Yeah.
Wow, is anyone in Hollywood listening? Oh,
Not
anyway.
anymore. All
But
right. Let's see what else have we got here. Cindy Robertson has joined in. Hello, Cindy. Here's an interesting. I don't know why this question is asked, but Mark Wolf's asked, "Hey Ed, can you talk about GURPS?"
GURPS.
GURP,
What about GURPS?
that's what I want to know. What about GURPS?
I have bought many, many, many a GURPS thing down the years,
Yeah.
as Steve Jackson tackled the license for this or that beloved thing. Gave the GURPS treatment
Right.
to something else I was interested in, whether it was Discworld. Oh, and by the way, Modifius, I believe, now has the new license, and there's going to be a new one. But I mean, I would always buy the GURPS thing to see what they did with
Yeah.
it, and it was putting the same GURPS sort of story mechanics engine to all these, whatever the new thing was. It was always interesting. It was always playable.
Mm.
My friends and I always sat down and played it once or twice, and then said, and went back to what we wanted to do, because that's what gamers do. And they also tinker with everything you purchase. You always, oh, we can do better than that. And they change a rule, or they house rule this. That's what we do as gamers.
It's.
So yeah,
I mean, I don't want to disagree with that statement because that's exactly how I and my friends and gamers were. But I don't think that that's as universal a statement about gamers in 2024 as it used to be.
as it used to be, yes, true. Because gamers now are coming up and being presented with the hobby in a different way than they
Yeah.
were. We had to walk uphill both ways to
And we liked it.
yeah, we liked it. Yeah. No, but I mean, the world was different then, and you had to make your own entertainment, and far more of us didn't have someone to play with.
Mm.
And sometimes this was due to where we were. There was no gaming store nearby or anything. There was no local hangout. Um, Sometimes it was us. I mean, there were very few shy young girls, like the one that I told the story about,
Right.
who wanted to go into most gaming stores of the
They
time.
were scary places.
Yeah, they were scary places, and to which women might not feel welcome. Whether they
Yeah.
were or not
Yeah.
is another thing. Because in some gaming stores, in Toronto at least, they were welcome, but they were sure astonished to discover they were
Right.
welcome. Um, and they had to overcome their fear, go downtown, because the stores had to be downtown where people could get to them, to this scary place, and push open the door and walk in there. They had to do all that scary stuff by themselves. And if for whatever reason they didn't get the chance, they never got
Yeah.
their local game. Their gaming store was not, you know, it because of the background of D&D, that dangerous satanic game.
Yeah.
You weren't going to get to play it in your church basement the way chess or bridge in those days had a club. Um, D&D was just not on. So yeah, but it is changing now. People are coming to it online
Mm.
through computer games, more and more, and they can do as they please. They can go as they please online, without, they think, people watching what they're doing. Uh, well, I mean, you don't have the feeling
Right.
that you're
Right.
being supervised in the same way. So if something catches your eye because it's clickbait, you can click on it and go and look. That's the freedom of the internet. And but I mean, people are coming to it from a background of everybody swings a sword they couldn't possibly lift in real life and flies because they just do. And every character can do anything and everything, and we all multi-class like crazy, and every character is good at everything because they want to be. And and get off my lawn, and you know
All right.
so there's a bit of that.
This is a good segue because even with the interruptions we had, we're closing in on what I want to be respectful of you and the audience, not not make this a 6 hour multi-part series.
Oh, come on, that's what we do.
No, you know what,
We talked.
I really want to.
It's Hollywood, man.
Yeah.
We'll do Friday the 13th part 46.
um, so here we're the reason I started the show is it's the 50th anniversary of the game and the game D&D and the greater hobby of role playing. And you were just saying about how people are coming to the game in new ways that were not available when we got into it. But kind of looking back over the 50 years and where we've come, what do you think? What do you look ahead and think the future of the hobby and the game are going to be like? And as you say before, you kind of had to hide the fact you were playing it, even if it wasn't because of the church basement demonic thing. It was because you were a nerd and you'd get slammed into a locker for carrying around a player's handbook, and it's not or certainly becoming much less the case. It may even be gone entirely. So
Yeah.
a lot of cool people are outing themselves as D&D players. So,
Yeah.
what do you see for the future of this game for for the world for the people?
Well, yeah, here's the thing. When you become mainstream, you are in danger of being co-opted by the mainstream. And what that really means is you have to decide for yourself who you are, what you want to be, where you want to go in life. It's like it's time to do those other sort of movies
Mm.
where you find yourself. And that's the thing. Are you, now that you get past the flash and the sizzle, I got a magic sword, I can fly. Are you hollow underneath? What do you want to do in life? Do you have any aims? You know, who do you stand with when, push comes to shove? All that stuff. It's time to investigate that. It's time to, decide who you are. And uh the strength of the game will, in the future, will come. Does it provide talking points for that? You don't have to solve the world's problems.
Mm.
You have to make people think about them, make people value them. If they
Right.
go out of the movie theater, after seeing a movie, thinking about something, arguing about something over the water cooler, which, see how old we are,
Yeah.
um, then it has served its purpose. And it's the same thing with the game. If it gives us a path forward in life, if it's something we can do with our friends that we will value years later, and because what you're doing when you play D&D is building memories. you're building memories of stuff
Right.
you do with people. The same way that old soldiers have a bond because they went through tough times together. They went through hell together. And they remember it not just because they did something and survived it, but because that was back in the days when the world was their oyster. They were young, they
Mm.
were bright, the world, their lives stretched ahead of them. They were wrong about that, many of them, due to war, but
Yeah.
never mind. They thought, the world is, and they mattered. What they did in the world mattered. So what we do when we role play is we explore all that.
Mm.
And the power of the game will be, how much does that offer, the game offer to these new players playing it?
Right.
Is it hollow? Is the particular game being played, the campaign, the product that you're buying, is it hollow, or has somebody actually put in a plot of worth, and you are intrigued and it matters to you?
Mm.
That's where now, I mean, I've often reflected that the reason why we are in a golden age of movies, if you love fantasy and science fiction, if you love comic books,
Yeah.
is because all the kids, all the nerds who got shoved into lockers when we were young, they're running Hollywood studios
Yeah.
now, and they're making the movies they wanted to see made that weren't there for them to watch them. They're now running the studio, and by damn, they're going to make a decent movie, meaning the movie they want to see. And I think that's very much what we've got right now with D&D. We are at a time where if it becomes mainstream, okay, what are you going to do with that? You've got the bully pulpit. It's like becoming president. You've got the bully pulpit. What are you going to use it for? Are you just there for the power? Have you got a vision? Um,
Right.
what are you going to do with the future? What sort of future do you see for our country, sort of thing? And I mean, I'm speaking as a Canadian, so guys, before you get out the pitchforks, I have no horse in this race. Okay. Um,
Also, by the time they watch this, the race will have been run. Although we may still be fighting over the result.
oh yes, yeah, yes, yeah. I will avoid commenting on that, other than to remind the one candidate that no, we don't have to have the results in one day.
Yeah.
It's not a television program. It's the future of your country.
Yeah.
Just saying. It's maybe a little more important than a television program.
You think?
Just saying. Yeah. But anyway, but I mean, I
I'm
think that's
sure.
where.
I am certain that you and I feel uh, alike on this.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, D&D. See, that's the thing about being mainstream. Okay, now that you're in the mainstream, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it? And that's where, if people writing the games, whether they're computer games or the dungeon master who runs the game at your table, if they understand what their players want more of, but they give their players challenges as well as just handing their players more of what they want
Right.
on a plate, then the game will be of lasting worth. And people will fondly remember the moments at the gaming table years afterwards, particularly when some of the players have gone to their graves and are no longer
Right.
with us.
Right.
It will become how you remember them. Remember that time when. Remember that time. And this is the thing that when we were starting in the hobby and conventions were big and new, the big horrible thing was, let me tell you about the time our characters killed Asmodeus, and your eyes would glaze over,
Right.
you know. And then if the person was actually watching your eyes and taking their social cues rather than being unable to do so, they would see your face change and go, "Oh, I guess you had to be there." And they were right. You had to be there.
Yeah.
It mattered to you because you were there. You shared that thing. So what the game has to do to succeed is give us stuff that we want to be there for more of it. Great shared experiences, great
Yeah.
shared memories. And yeah, if you're a teacher or you're want morals and so on, you can say a good teaching moment. And sometimes it is a good teaching moment. But more of it is just picking up the experience. And this is where old style D&D, so now I'll do the old school rules thing. Gary had the game so that no one character class was good at everything. You needed your friends. And as the game has been rewritten and rewritten through editions, more and more min-maxing so that each character can do it all is happening. And that is the wrong road to go down, because it means the teamwork. You need your friends. We all need each other. That message, which was just built into the game without being rammed down our throats, is getting watered down and lessened and watered down and lessened. But again, a good D&D game forces you into teamwork. It forces you to work with your friends, and that means you're forced to listen to your friends. If they have concerns or they want done something a different way you would do it, you need them. You need their spells or their healing or their whatever. So you got to listen to them, and you and everybody profit thereby by listening to them. So I mean, that's the thing I think is the lasting thing that D&D and all role-playing games can give us. Unless it's a nihilistic horror role-playing game where we're all going to die, and it's a question of seeing how we die and how quickly and how cartoonishly
Right.
entertaining our deaths can be. Unless it's that, that's what we're getting from the game, and I love it. I mean, that's why the role-playing games are the greatest games in the world, because they're your game. You change them by playing them. That's the one game you can't. Okay, I know everybody has house rules for Monopoly and everything, but the game is not designed to be changed at the table.
Right.
D&D is. D&D is collaborative. It's designed to, it's your player characters will always do the wrong thing and make the dungeon master shake his head. That's what was so hilarious about the D&D movie.
Right.
Because everybody did what they weren't supposed to do over and over again. It was lovely. And I'm going, yep, that's D&D all right.
D.
Anyway.
Yeah, I would say that in describing the different kinds of writing that I do, I've often said that writing fiction, writing stories is preparing a meal, and someone is going to eat the thing that you have prepared for them, and you can control what it tastes like and how much salt is and all of that. And role-playing games are like a buffet where you put all the things out there and they're well prepared, but the person is deciding what goes on their plate and how. Maybe they're going to put too much mashed potatoes because they love the mashed potatoes. Maybe they won't have any vegetables, and well, it's not so good for them. But
yep.
Yeah, because Michael says yes, good Thanksgiving simile there. All right, Ed. We've been going at this a while, and thank you very much for coming. As I was saying before, we could keep talking, and I would love to have you back on again to do just that. Hopefully, figure out all of these problems I seem to have when we're together. It's my fault. It's my fault.
Don't be like that. No, yeah, let's get back together again sometime. We will work our schedules out, and I don't know if we'll ever work the tech out, but I mean, think of it as entertainment, free entertainment, folks.
Yes.
Where else do you get to see a man cry over his, no, whatever.
Yeah. So if people want to reach you, they probably know how already, but we have determined that going to Discord and going to Greenwood's Grotto is their best way to reach out, that you interact with folks there, and that's where they can see what's going on.
Sure, yeah. I'd love to see you. And lots of people who work on the realms, like Steve Shand and Eric Boyd and George Crouchers, they hang out there too. So if it's something that they wrote and that you're interested in, they may be there to answer you.
It's always nice to have a place where the creators are hanging out casually.
Yeah, Yeah, because we love the game.
Yeah.
Because we love the realms. That's all. Yeah.
All right, Ed. Again, thank you. Enjoy your Canadian Thanksgiving this week. And while people are watching this, I hope that someone brings you a nice American Thanksgiving too.
All right. Thank you.
Double
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Thanks for having me.
All right,
Yeah.
hang on,
Thanks.
Ed. I'm going to make a little outro, and then you and I can say our goodbyes.
Alrighty. Okay. Thanks.
All right, so come over here, and yeah, thank you to Ed for coming and putting up with the tech problems that I've had. Mostly, it was easy for him. I'm going to be watching the replay on this, and I'm not sure. What I'm seeing on my screen is a little wonky, but folks in the chat have told me that it sounds good, and that's really what matters. We're telling stories and enjoying each other's company, and if it looks a little weird, doesn't matter. Everyone's going to enjoy it. Thank you all who came to the chat and then came back to the chat. As I said before, if you were watching this live, I've got a Kickstarter going on right now for the 50 Years in the Dungeon calendar. Is it a calendar? I'm home, yes. Calendar. It comes in a wall calendar and a desk calendar. The Kickstarter is going on. You can find that at newstandproject.com. Will take you to the Kickstarter page. In Thanksgiving, you could still try that link because I may have another Kickstarter going by then. So here we go. Good for everyone. Thank you all for tuning in, and I had a really good time. I mean, I have a good time with all my guests. I haven't seen Ed in a really long time. And the truth is that this, as of the recording this, I'm going to get to see him in person next week at Gamehole Con in Madison, Wisconsin. So those of you watching live, if you're going to be in Gamehole Con, come and say hi. So before something else blows up, I'm going to say thank you all for coming. It's been a good time. I'll be back... well, you're seeing this in the end of November. I'll be back in December, hopefully, and we'll see what happens next week, because I have no idea. Till then, take care. Bye.